Mafia Boss heard his fiancée threaten a little girl. What happened next changed the house forever. What threat did he overhear, and why would that moment transform the entire household? How would he respond after hearing his fiancée's true words? Hello, everyone, and welcome to SevenTev Stories, where hidden truths, emotional confrontations, and unforgettable consequences come to light. Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story. Thank you for every view, comment, and moment you spend with us. Your support helps our storytelling community continue growing. Tell us in the comments where in the world you are watching from and what time it is there right now. We are always excited to welcome viewers from across the globe. Now, settle in, listen closely, and let us step into the opening moments of today's unforgettable story. He thought the most dangerous thing in his house came from the men outside the gates, but Vincent Moretti was about to learn that cruelty sometimes wore perfume, diamonds, and his engagement ring. Rain slid down the black windows of the Moretti estate as his car rolled silently through the iron gates, 2 hours earlier than anyone expected. The mansion stood at the end of the driveway like a monument to power, all white stone, tall columns, and warm golden light spilling through curtains that cost more than most people made in a month. Inside, every hallway usually adjusted itself to Vincent's presence before he even entered. Guards straightened. Staff lowered their voices. Doors opened without him touching them. But that night, the house did not greet him with obedience. It greeted him with a child's fear. Vincent had barely removed his charcoal overcoat when he heard it, a small voice trembling somewhere beyond the service corridor near the laundry room. At first, he thought it was one of the staff children laughing too softly to be heard. Then another voice answered, smooth, cold, and familiar enough to make his hand pause on the silver cufflink at his wrist. Madison Vale. His fiancée. The woman who had spent the last 6 months smiling beside him at charity dinners, choosing white roses for their wedding, and telling every reporter she wanted to bring warmth into the Moretti home. Her voice now carried no warmth at all. One word to your mother, Madison whispered, each syllable polished and sharp, and I will make sure she never works in this city again. Vincent stopped in the shadowed hallway. The rain tapped against the glass behind him like a warning. He could see only part of the laundry room through the narrow gap of the half-open door, the edge of a spinning machine, a child's faded backpack on the floor, and Madison's pale hand wrapped around the strap as if she owned even that. Then the little girl spoke, her voice so small it barely rose above the hum of the dryer. But you stole from Mr. Moretti. The words landed in Vincent's chest with the weight of a locked door breaking open. For a moment, he forgot the wet cuffs of his pants, the security detail waiting near the foyer, the meeting he had left unfinished downtown. He listened. In his world, people lied beautifully when they knew he was watching. The truth only slipped out when they believed they were alone. You don't know what you saw, Madison said, lower now. You are a little girl who sits in the laundry room because your mother has nowhere else to put you. Do you understand how easy it would be for people to believe you made it up? The child did not answer. Vincent heard the faintest sound of fabric moving, maybe her sleeve brushing her face, maybe her fingers tightening around the cheap zipper of her coat. He knew that child. Maya Carter. 7 years old. Daughter of Evelyn Carter, the black maid who arrived before sunrise, left after dark, and never once asked him for anything except permission to keep her daughter in the staff area after school. Vincent had approved it without thinking much about it. A harmless favor, he had told himself. A small mercy in a house built on rules. Now that same house held its breath around a frightened little girl while the woman he planned to marry tried to bury the truth behind a closed door. Madison stepped closer to Maya, her diamond bracelet catching the laundry room light. Listen carefully, she said. Your mother needs this job. You need this roof while she works. So you will forget the envelope. You will forget the drawer. And you will never repeat my name. Vincent's eyes moved to the floor just beyond the doorway. There, near Maya's shoe, lay a red wax flake from one of his private family envelopes. Something cold and ancient settled over his face, not anger loud enough to shake the walls, but a quieter thing, the kind that changed the temperature of a room before anyone knew why. He did not step in yet. He did not say Madison's name. He simply stood in the shadow, listening to the last pieces of her mask fall away, while the great Moretti house, with all its marble and gold, finally showed him the rot hiding beneath its shine. Vincent waited until Madison released the backpack strap and stepped away from the child. The old dryer kept turning behind her, sending a soft mechanical rhythm through the service corridor, the kind of ordinary sound that made the moment feel even colder. Maya stood with her shoulders drawn in, her dark curls damp from the rain she must have walked through after school, her small hands pressed flat against the front of her coat as if she could hold herself together by force. Madison smoothed the front of her cream-colored dress, checked her reflection in the dark glass of the laundry room window, and in one practiced breath became the woman everyone else knew again. Calm. Elegant. Untouchable. When she opened the door, Vincent had already moved back into the shadow beside the storage alcove. She passed within 3 feet of him, leaving behind the scent of expensive perfume and something uglier that perfume could not hide. She did not see him. That was the first mistake she made. Her heels clicked down the hallway toward the main rooms, each step confident, each step unaware that the life she had arranged so carefully had begun to come apart behind her. Vincent remained still until the sound faded. Then he looked through the open doorway. Maya had not moved. The child stared at the floor where the red wax flake lay near her shoe, her lower lip trembling, but no tears falling yet. Some children cried when frightened. Others learned too early how to keep quiet. Vincent knew that kind of silence. He had seen it in grown men at polished tables, in employees who needed their jobs too much to speak, in rooms where power had trained everyone to swallow the truth. He had never expected to see it on a 7-year-old girl in his own house. The Moretti estate had always been described as beautiful. Magazine writers called it historic. Guests called it breathtaking. Staff called it complicated when they thought no one important was listening. It had 32 rooms, 12 fireplaces, a west garden large enough for wedding tents, and a kitchen that could feed 200 people without disturbing the dining room upstairs. To Vincent, it had always been a fortress. White marble floors. Walnut-paneled walls. Tall windows looking over 12 acres of clipped lawn and black iron fencing. Every inch of it had been designed to make visitors understand where they were and who held authority there. But authority had a way of creating shadows. In the front rooms, Madison had filled the house with samples for the wedding, linen swatches, ivory candles, gold-rimmed plates, invitations printed on paper thick as money. In the back rooms, Evelyn Carter pressed uniforms, polished silver, scrubbed stair corners with careful hands, and made sure her daughter sat quietly with homework while the world upstairs planned a celebration that never included them. Vincent had known Evelyn by sight before he knew her name. She was the woman who never looked exhausted until she thought no one could see. The woman who thanked guards when they opened doors, who saved leftover dinner rolls in napkins, who mended her daughter's coat with thread that almost matched. She moved through the mansion like a person trying not to disturb the air. And Vincent, who noticed threats for a living, had failed to notice how much fear lived under his own roof. He stepped into the laundry room at last, slowly enough not to startle Maya. The child looked up, and the color drained from her face. To her, he was not a savior yet. He was the owner of the house. The man whose name could decide whether her mother worked tomorrow. Vincent lowered his voice. Until it was gentler than the rain against the windows. Maya, he said, you are not in trouble. She clutched the zipper of her coat. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway where Madison had disappeared. Please do not tell my mom, she whispered. She will be scared. Something tightened in Vincent's chest. Not because the child feared punishment for herself, but because even now, with her own hands shaking, she was trying to protect her mother. In that moment, the mansion no longer felt like a fortress. It felt like a place that had mistaken silence for loyalty, obedience for respect, and fear for peace. Vincent looked down at the red wax on the floor, then back at the child. "What envelope did she take?" he asked. Maya swallowed hard. "The red one from your desk," she said. "The one with the letter M on it." The room seemed to narrow around those words. Vincent knew that envelope. It did not hold money. It held a document Madison should never have touched. Vincent did not ask Maya another question in the laundry room. He had learned long ago that frightened people could tell the truth with their eyes before their mouths were ready, and the child had already given him more than enough. He crouched just slightly, not low enough to feel theatrical, only enough that she did not have to crane her neck to face him. "Go to the staff kitchen," he said quietly. "Find your mother. Stay beside her until I come for you." Maya hesitated, searching his face for the trap she had been taught to expect from powerful adults. "Is my mom going to lose her job?" she asked. Vincent looked toward the hallway Madison had taken, where the scent of her perfume still hung like a lie refusing to leave. "No," he said. "Your mother is not the one who should be worried tonight." Maya held his gaze for one uncertain second, then slipped past him with her backpack pulled tight to her chest. Her small sneakers made almost no sound on the service hall floor. Vincent watched her turn the corner, and only when she was gone did he bend down and pick up the red wax flake. It rested on his palm like a tiny piece of warning. The letter pressed into it was not a simple M for Moretti. It was the mark of his private family trust, a seal used only for documents that never belonged outside his study. Madison had not taken wedding papers. She had taken something tied to his house, his accounts, and the future of every person living under his roof. For several seconds, Vincent stood alone among laundry baskets and folded towels, surrounded by the clean smell of detergent and the soft heat of machines, while the truth arranged itself in his mind. The grand rooms above him were full of music, flowers, and laughter. His fiancée was probably smiling by now, accepting champagne from a server with the same hand she had used to threaten a child. That was the part that chilled him most. Not that Madison had lied. People lied around Vincent every day. It was that she had done it comfortably, inside his home, against people who had no way to defend themselves. He walked back through the service corridor without raising his voice, without calling his guards, without letting his face betray what he knew. Staff members stepped aside as he passed. A young busboy nearly dropped a tray of clean glasses. Mrs. Helen Brooks, the head housekeeper, paused near the pantry door with a clipboard pressed against her chest. She had worked for the Moretti family for 21 years, long enough to know when Vincent was angry and long enough to fear when he was calm. "Mr. Moretti," she said carefully. "You are home early." Vincent stopped beside her. "Where is Evelyn Carter?" Mrs. Brooks blinked once, then glanced toward the staff kitchen. That tiny movement said more than an answer. "She is finishing the dinner linens, sir." "Has my fiancé had any problems with her?" The question seemed to remove the color from the older woman's face. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. Around them, the mansion continued pretending to be perfect. Crystal clinked in the distant dining room. A florist laughed near the front hall. Somewhere upstairs, Madison's wedding planner was probably discussing seating charts and ivory ribbon. But in the narrow corridor, Mrs. Brooks stood with the look of someone who had carried too many secrets for too long. "Mr. Moretti," she whispered, "I think you should speak to Evelyn alone." Vincent studied her, and the silence between them grew heavy. Helen Brooks had survived in his house by never volunteering trouble. If she was telling him to ask, then the answer was worse than the question. "No," Vincent said at last. "Not alone. Not anymore." Then he turned toward the staff kitchen, the red wax still closed in his fist, and for the first time that night, the walls of the Moretti estate seemed to understand that the man who owned them had finally started listening. The staff kitchen sat beneath the east wing, far from the chandeliers and polished laughter of the reception rooms. It was a practical place, all stainless steel counters, white tile, warm ovens, and the quiet exhaustion of people who made luxury possible without ever being allowed to touch it. Evelyn Carter stood at the long prep table folding dinner napkins into perfect rectangles, her black uniform sleeves rolled neatly at the wrists, her hair pinned back with two simple clips that had lost most of their shine. Maya was beside her now, sitting on a wooden stool with her backpack in her lap, trying too hard to look normal. That was what stopped Vincent in the doorway. Not the fear. The performance. The child was pretending she had not been threatened. The mother was pretending she did not notice. And everyone else in that kitchen was pretending they had seen nothing for months. Evelyn looked up first. The moment she saw Vincent, she straightened so quickly one of the napkins slipped from the table edge and landed on the floor. "Mr. Moretti," she said, already bending to pick it up. "I am sorry, sir. I did not know you needed anything." He heard the apology before there was a reason for it, and something in him hardened against himself. "Do not apologize," he said. The room went still. A dishwasher stopped loading plates. A cook lowered a tray of rolls without setting it down. Mrs. Brooks entered behind him, silent and pale. Evelyn's eyes moved from Vincent to Mrs. Brooks, then to Maya. A mother's fear crossed her face so quickly most people would have missed it. Vincent did not. "Maya," Evelyn said softly, "what happened?" Maya's fingers tightened. Around the backpack strap. "Nothing, Mom." The lie was tiny, protective, and heartbreaking. Evelyn turned back to Vincent, shame and worry fighting behind her eyes. "Sir, if she went somewhere she was not supposed to go, I take full responsibility. I told her to stay by the homework shelf, but sometimes she needs the restroom, and I was working upstairs earlier, and I should have had someone watching her." Each word came faster than the last, as if she could build a wall of blame around her daughter before anyone else reached her. Vincent placed the red wax flake on the steel counter between them. It looked impossibly bright under the kitchen lights. Evelyn stared at it, then at Maya, and the color left her face. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. Maya's eyes filled at last. "I saw Miss Madison take the envelope," she said. "I took a picture because you always say the truth needs proof." The kitchen did not breathe. Evelyn closed her eyes, not in anger, but in the exhausted pain of someone whose worst fear had finally found her child. "Baby," she whispered, "you should not have had to do that." Vincent watched her reach for Maya, then stop herself because he was in the room, because even comfort felt like something she needed permission to give. That small hesitation told him more about his house than any report ever could. "Mrs. Carter," he said, his voice quiet, "how long has Madison been speaking to you this way?" Evelyn looked at Mrs. Brooks, then down at the napkins, then at her daughter. For a moment, the habit of survival almost won. She almost said everything was fine. She almost chose silence because rent was due, groceries cost more every week, and a good job in a rich house could vanish with one displeased word. But Maya was watching her, and there are moments when a child makes courage impossible to avoid. Evelyn lifted her chin. "Since the week she moved in," she said. "Not always in front of people. Not always with words anyone would call cruel if they heard them from the hallway. But enough." Vincent's face did not change, yet the room felt colder. Evelyn swallowed. "She told me staff children make guests uncomfortable. She told me Maya should enter through the back even when it was raining. She told me I should be grateful because women like me do not get second chances in houses like this." Maya leaned into her mother's side. Evelyn put an arm around her now, permission or not. Vincent looked at the folded napkins, the tired hands, the child's worn backpack, and the red wax on the counter. Upstairs, wedding music floated faintly through the vents. Downstairs, the truth had finally found a voice. Vincent asked for Maya's phone, and the child handed it over with both hands, as if the cracked little device weighed more than silver. The screen protector was split across one corner, the pink case faded and rubbed smooth where small fingers had held it through bus rides, homework sessions, and long evenings in the staff kitchen. Vincent tapped the gallery icon, and the first image opened beneath the harsh kitchen lights. Madison stood in his private study, one hand inside the locked drawer beneath his desk, the other holding the red envelope with the Moretti seal already broken. Her face was turned slightly toward the door, impatient and careless, beautiful in the way a polished knife could be beautiful without ever becoming kind. No one spoke. The photograph was not perfect. It was tilted, blurred at the edges, taken by a frightened child hiding near the hall. But it was enough. Then Maya touched the screen with a trembling finger. "There is sound too," she whispered. Vincent looked at Evelyn for permission, because for the first time that night he understood that the evidence belonged not only to him, but to the child who had been forced to carry it. Evelyn nodded once, her arms still wrapped around her daughter. The recording began with the muffled hum of the laundry room, then Madison's voice, low and unmistakable, filling the staff kitchen like smoke under a closed door. "One word to your mother, and I will make sure she never works in this city again." Evelyn's hand tightened on Maya's shoulder. Mrs. Brooks covered her mouth. A young cook looked down at his shoes. Vincent did not move at all. He listened to every second. He listened to Madison call the child invisible. He listened to her say that people like Evelyn survived only because generous people allowed it. He listened to the moment Maya's breath caught, the tiny sound of a little girl trying not to cry because crying might make things worse. When the recording ended, silence took its place so completely that even the oven seemed quieter. Vincent set the phone down with care. "Who else knew?" he asked. The question was not loud, but it carried through the room with more force than shouting ever could. Mrs. Brooks lowered her hand. "Some of us suspected," she said. "Some saw pieces. We thought it was not our place." Vincent turned his eyes toward her. "A child was threatened in my house. Whose place should it have been?" Mrs. Brooks looked as if the words had struck the truth out of her. "Ours," she whispered. "It should have been ours." Evelyn shook her head quickly, still protecting everyone but herself. "Please, sir. People were afraid." Madison made it clear that anyone who complained would be replaced. She said after the wedding, she would be mistress of this house, and all staff contracts would be reviewed. Nobody wanted to risk their families. There it was, the shape of Madison's power. Not a storm. Not a scene. Just slow pressure applied to people with rent, medicine, children, and nowhere else to go. Vincent had built a house where enemies could not enter, yet he had allowed fear to sit at the table wearing white silk and planting flowers. He picked up Maya's phone again and handed it back to Evelyn. "Keep this with you," he said. "Do not give it to anyone except me." Then he turned to Mrs. Brooks. "No one tells Madison what I know." The older woman straightened, finding a courage that had been asleep too long. "Yes, Mr. Moretti." Vincent looked once more at Maya. The child watched him with wide, uncertain eyes, still unsure whether truth would save her or punish her. He softened his voice. "You did the right thing." Maya blinked, and the first tear finally slipped down her cheek. Evelyn pulled her close, and for the first time since Vincent entered the kitchen, she did not ask permission to comfort her own daughter. Above them, laughter drifted faintly from the grand rooms. Madison's bright voice rising among guests who still believed the house belonged to her future. Vincent turned toward the staircase, calm as winter, and began walking back toward the light. The staircase from the staff kitchen to the main floor was narrow, plain, and hidden behind a paneled door near the east corridor, a path designed so servants could move through the mansion without disturbing the beautiful illusion upstairs. Vincent had walked those front halls 1,000 times, but now he chose the service stairs, feeling the difference beneath his polished shoes. No velvet runner. No framed oil paintings. No warm lamps placed for effect. Just painted walls, worn edges, and the faint smell of detergent rising from below. This was the part of his house guests never saw, the part where people carried trays, swallowed insults, and learned how to disappear. By the time he reached the top, his face had become unreadable again. The grand foyer opened before him in gold and ivory. Florists adjusted white roses along the banister. A wedding planner in a navy suit whispered urgently into a headset. 2 servers passed with trays of sparkling water and lemon slices. Every detail looked expensive, controlled, perfect. That perfection suddenly seemed obscene. Madison stood near the fireplace in the west parlor, laughing with a senator's wife and 2 women from the charity board. Her cream dress caught the chandelier light, her diamond ring flashing each time she lifted her glass. She looked like a woman born to belong in rooms like that. Vincent watched her from the archway and wondered how many people had mistaken cruelty for confidence simply because it came wrapped in elegance. Madison noticed him a second later. Her smile brightened instantly, practiced and beautiful. "There you are," she said, crossing the room toward him as though nothing in the world had shifted. "I was starting to think downtown had stolen you from your own pre-wedding dinner." She reached for his arm. Vincent allowed it. Her fingers rested lightly against his sleeve, the same hand that had gripped a child's backpack minutes earlier. "I came home early," he said. "Clearly," Madison answered with a teasing softness meant for nearby ears. "You missed the florist nearly having a breakdown over the ivory roses. Apparently, there are 12 shades of ivory, and all of them are wrong." The women behind her laughed. Vincent did not. His eyes moved to the ring on her hand, then to her face. "Did you go into my study tonight?" Madison's smile paused for less than a heartbeat. Most people would have missed it. Vincent did not miss heartbeats. "Your study?" she repeated. "No. Why would I?" "The drawer under my desk was opened." Madison tilted her head, amused now, careful now. "Vincent, half the house is full of staff preparing for tomorrow. Maybe someone was cleaning." The words slid into place exactly where he expected them to go. Not denial alone. Direction. A path leading away from her and toward someone easier to blame. "Someone," he said. "Perhaps." Madison lowered her voice, letting concern soften her expression. "Honestly, I have been meaning to talk to you about the staff. I know you are loyal to people, and that is one of the things I admire about you, but Evelyn has seemed distracted lately. Her daughter wanders around too much. Children touch things. They misunderstand things. They repeat things." Vincent looked at her then, fully, and Madison's smile thinned under the weight of his attention. Around them, conversation continued, but the room had started to feel aware of them. The senator's wife stopped laughing. A server slowed near the doorway. The fire snapped softly in the marble hearth. "That is interesting," Vincent said. "Because I was going to ask you about Evelyn." Madison exhaled through a delicate smile, as if relieved to be useful. "Then I am glad you brought it up. I did not want to create drama before the wedding, but I think something is wrong there. Maybe money trouble. Maybe resentment. She is quiet, but quiet people can hide so much." Vincent thought of Evelyn standing beside folded napkins, apologizing before anyone accused her. He thought of Maya holding a broken phone like a shield. "Yes," he said. "Quiet people can hide quite a lot." Madison placed her glass on a side table. "Do you want me to handle it? After tomorrow, this house will need clearer standards." There it was. After tomorrow. The phrase settled between them like a signature on a document. Vincent's private trust, his staff contracts, his home, his name, all waiting behind one wedding day. He turned slightly toward the head of security standing near the hall. "Ask Mrs. Brooks to bring Evelyn Carter to the West Parlor," he said calmly. Madison's eyes sharpened. Vincent, is that necessary in front of guests? He looked back at her. Very necessary. The room went quiet piece by piece, not all at once, but like lights going out down a long hallway. Madison's hand moved toward her ring, twisting it once around her finger. For the first time that night, the woman who had threatened a child began to understand that someone had been listening. Mrs. Brooks appeared at the west parlor doorway less than 2 minutes later, and the change in the room was immediate. Conversations that had been pretending to continue faded into the soft clink of ice against crystal. Evelyn stood beside the older housekeeper in her black uniform, one hand resting gently on Maya's shoulder. The little girl had washed her face, but her eyes were still red, and the pink phone case peeked from Evelyn's apron pocket like a secret waiting to breathe. Madison saw them and recovered quickly, too quickly. Her face softened into the expression she used at charity luncheons, the one that made wealthy women reach for checkbooks and photographers raise their cameras. "Evelyn," she said, her voice sweet enough to make the truth feel impolite. "Sweetheart, why did you bring Maya into the parlor? This is an adult gathering." Evelyn did not answer. She kept her eyes on Vincent, not because she trusted him completely yet, but because fear had taught her to look for the person who held the key to the room. Vincent stood near the fireplace, one hand in his pocket, the other resting at his side. "Maya is here because this concerns her," he said. Madison gave a small laugh, embarrassed on his behalf. "Vincent, please. I understand you are concerned about the drawer, but children can be confused. Especially children who spend too much time in places they should not be." Maya moved closer to Evelyn's skirt. The gesture was small, but every person in the parlor saw it. A senator's wife looked away. One of the charity board women lowered her glass. Madison noticed the shift and changed tactics. "Actually," she said, turning toward the guests as if offering a painful but necessary truth, "I did not want to say this tonight, but I found Maya near your study earlier. She was holding something red. I thought perhaps it was only sealing wax from the desk, but now I wonder if she took more than that." Evelyn's chin lifted. "My daughter does not steal." Madison's smile tightened. "No one wants to believe that about their child." The words landed softly, and somehow that made them crueler. Vincent watched Evelyn absorb them without flinching. He saw her hand curl once around Maya's shoulder, not hard, only protective. He saw Maya's mouth tremble as if she wanted to speak but had been trained by the room to stay small. And he saw Madison, graceful and pale beside the fireplace, trying to turn a frightened little girl into a suspect before anyone could turn her into a witness. "Madison," Vincent said, "be careful." She turned to him, wounded now. "I am trying to protect you. You are surrounded by people who know your routines, your documents, your private rooms. You trust too easily when pity is involved." The parlor went silent. Pity. The word exposed her more than any confession could have. Evelyn looked down, but Maya looked up. The child's voice came out thin and shaking. "I did not take anything." Madison sighed, almost kindly. "Maya, lying will only make this worse for your mother." That was the moment Vincent moved. Not quickly, not loudly. He simply crossed the few feet between them and stood beside Evelyn and Maya instead of beside his fiancée. It changed the shape of the entire room. For months, everyone had assumed Madison stood closest to power. Now power had taken one step away from her. Vincent looked at Evelyn. "Mrs. Carter, you have my permission to speak freely." Evelyn's eyes filled, but her voice stayed steady. "I do not need permission to tell the truth, sir. I only needed to know my child would be safe after I told it." Madison's face went still. The fire cracked behind her. Somewhere beyond the parlor doors, the wedding planner whispered into her headset and then fell silent too. Vincent turned his gaze back to Madison. "Then let us make sure everyone hears it." Vincent did not ask Evelyn to perform her pain for the room. He knew that was another kind of cruelty, making the wounded prove they had been wounded while polished people judged the shape of their scars. Instead, he turned to Mrs. Brooks. "Bring me the tablet from security," he said. The older housekeeper nodded and left at once, her sensible shoes moving faster than anyone had ever seen them move. Madison's eyes followed her, then snapped back to Vincent. "Security," she said lightly, but the lightness did not reach her throat. "Vincent, this is becoming absurd." He looked at her without blinking. "Then the truth should end it quickly." No one laughed. Evelyn stood very still beside Maya, her face composed, but her hand never left her daughter's shoulder. The guests had stopped pretending this was a private disagreement. They watched now with the uneasy fascination of people who had come dressed for celebration and found themselves standing at the edge of judgment. The senator's wife folded her hands around her clutch. One of the charity board women stared at Madison's ring as if seeing it for the first time. When Mrs. Brooks returned, she held the security tablet against her chest like a Bible. Vincent took it, entered his code, and opened the hallway footage outside his private study. The screen showed Madison in the corridor less than an hour earlier, moving with the confidence of someone who knew which cameras faced which doors. She paused, looked left, looked right, then slipped into the study. A minute later, she stepped out with the red envelope tucked beneath a stack of wedding folders. The room went so quiet that the fire sounded too loud. Madison's face changed, not completely, but enough. The softness disappeared first. Then the wounded innocence. What remained was calculation, naked and fast. "I was looking for seating documents," she said. "You told me somewhere in your office." Vincent tapped the screen. Again. Another angle appeared, this one from the rear hall near the laundry room. Madison froze. The picture did not show the whole room, but it showed enough, her blocking the doorway, Maya standing inside, the backpack held in Madison's hand. Vincent did not play the audio yet. He let the image sit in the air. Sometimes silence made people confess to themselves before they confessed to anyone else. Evelyn inhaled sharply. Maya buried her face against her mother's side. Madison's voice lowered. That child was somewhere she should not have been. Vincent finally lifted Maya's phone from Evelyn's apron pocket and placed it on the mantel. "And you said something you should never have said." He pressed play. Madison's recorded voice filled the parlor, cold and clear, no longer protected by perfume, money, or candlelight. "One word to your mother, and I will make sure she never works in this city again." A small gasp moved through the room. The recording continued. "You will forget the envelope. You will forget the drawer. And you will never repeat my name." Madison reached toward the phone, but Vincent's hand closed over it first. He did not grab her. He did not raise his voice. He simply looked at her, and she stopped moving. "Enough," he said. The word settled over everyone. Evelyn's eyes glistened, but she kept her chin high. Maya slowly lifted her head. For the first time all night, the little girl looked not like someone trapped in a rich man's house, but like someone whose truth had finally found a place to stand. Vincent turned to the guests, to the staff gathered in the doorway, to the woman wearing his ring. "Let every person in this room understand what happened here," he said. "A child told the truth. An adult tried to bury it. And this house will not protect the adult." Madison's lips parted, but no graceful answer came. The room had heard her. The house had heard her. And there was no door left for the lie to hide behind. Madison looked at the faces around her and understood, perhaps for the first time, that beauty could not rescue a lie once the room had heard its real voice. The charity board women who had praised her taste in flowers now stared as if the cream dress, the diamond bracelet, and the careful smile had become a costume hanging on the wrong person. The senator's wife stepped back 1 inch, small enough to seem polite, large enough to be noticed. A server at the door lowered his tray. Mrs. Brooks stood with both hands folded in front of her, no longer hiding behind the practiced emptiness of staff discipline. Evelyn remained beside Maya, her breathing steady, though Vincent could see the effort it took. Madison's eyes moved from the guests to the staff, then to Vincent, searching for the one opening still available to her. "You are humiliating me," she said softly, and the tremble in her voice was perfectly placed. "In front of strangers. In front of employees. After everything I have done for this house." Vincent studied her for a long second. "This house was standing before you arrived." Madison's expression flickered. "And it was cold. Empty. I was trying to make it respectable." The word respectable drifted across the parlor and landed where she had always meant it to land, on Evelyn's uniform, on Maya's worn backpack, on the staff gathered just outside the doorway. Vincent saw Evelyn's jaw tighten, but she said nothing. She did not need to. The room had begun to hear the words beneath Madison's words. "Respectable," Vincent repeated. "Is that what you call threatening a child?" Madison lifted her chin. "I call it protecting boundaries. You let people get too comfortable here, Vincent. You let them forget there is a difference between family and staff." Maya flinched at the word staff. Evelyn felt it and pulled her daughter closer. That tiny movement did what Madison's explanations could not. It made the room choose. Not loudly. Not with applause. But in the shift of eyes, the tightening of mouths, the silence that no longer belonged to fear. Vincent turned to his head of security, Anthony Bell, who stood near the archway with his hands folded. "Cancel Madison's access to the estate, my accounts, and every private calendar connected to this house." Madison's face went pale. "Vincent," he continued, calm and exact. "Notify the wedding planner that tomorrow's ceremony is cancelled. All vendor payments will be honored. All staff scheduled for overtime will still be paid." The wedding planner made a sound like a swallowed gasp, then quickly nodded. Madison stepped toward him. "You cannot be serious. Because of a misunderstanding with a little girl?" Vincent looked at Maya, then back at Madison. "No. Because you thought she was little enough to silence." The words stopped her. For several seconds, even the rain against the windows seemed to pause. Then Madison's hand moved to the engagement ring. She covered it with her fingers as if the diamond might keep her anchored to the life slipping away beneath her. Vincent extended his hand, palm up. He did not demand. He simply waited. That was worse. Madison looked around the parlor, hoping someone would object, someone important, someone who still believed appearances mattered more than truth. No one moved. Slowly, with a stiffness that made every inch feel public, she pulled the ring from her finger and placed it in his palm. The diamond caught the firelight once before Vincent closed his hand around it. "You will leave tonight," he said. "Your personal belongings will be packed respectfully and delivered to an address of your choosing. You will not contact Evelyn Carter. You will not contact Maya. You will not contact anyone on my staff for favors, explanations, or revenge disguised as concern." Madison's mouth opened, but whatever answer she had prepared found no place to stand. Anthony stepped forward, not threatening, only formal, and gestured toward the foyer. Madison looked at Vincent one last time, then at Evelyn, then at Maya. For once, she had no polished sentence left. Her heels crossed the marble floor, the same confident sound as before, but now each click felt smaller. When the front door opened, cold rain air swept into the parlor and moved through the white roses. When it closed behind her, the house did not feel empty. It felt as though it had finally exhaled. For a long moment after the front door closed, no one in the west parlor knew what to do with their hands, their eyes, or the silence Madison had left behind. The white roses still climbed the banister. The candles still burned on the mantel. The wedding folders still lay on the side table, neat and useless, filled with tomorrow's seating chart for a ceremony that would never happen. Vincent stood by the fireplace with the engagement ring closed in his palm, but he did not look victorious. Victory would have been too simple for what the room had just witnessed. This was not triumph. This was a correction arriving late. Evelyn shifted as if preparing to take Maya back downstairs, back to the staff kitchen, back to the place where women like her were expected to disappear once the important moment had passed. Vincent saw the movement and stopped it with one quiet sentence. "Please stay." Evelyn froze. She was not used to being asked. She was used to being instructed, summoned, corrected, dismissed. The word please moved through the room more powerfully than any command. Vincent turned to Anthony. "Bring the red envelope from Madison's purse if it has not already been removed. Do it respectfully, and bring it here sealed in an evidence folder." Anthony nodded and left. No one spoke while they waited. The guests stood in uneasy clusters, suddenly aware of the staff in the doorway, suddenly aware that every glass they had held, every napkin on their lap, every polished surface around them had passed through hands they had barely seen. Maya leaned against Evelyn, exhausted now that fear had no place left to run. Vincent looked at the child, then at the small phone in Evelyn's apron pocket, and something about its cracked screen stayed with him. The richest house in 3 counties had needed a 7-year-old girl with a broken phone to tell the truth. When Anthony returned, the red envelope was inside a clear folder, the wax seal broken cleanly across the center. Vincent opened it on the marble coffee table. Inside were 3 documents. The first was a copy of the Household Trust Amendment, one Vincent had asked his attorney to draft but had never signed. The second was a list of staff positions marked for review after the wedding. Evelyn Carter's name was circled in blue ink. Beside it, Madison had written one word: remove. The third document made Mrs. Brooks inhale sharply. It was a proposed transfer of domestic hiring authority to Madison Vale upon marriage, giving her control over staff contracts, housing privileges, access permissions, and severance approval. It was not illegal by itself. That almost made it worse. It was cruelty dressed as paperwork, power arranged in clean margins and polite legal language. Vincent set the pages down one by one. His face remained still, but his voice changed when he spoke. It became lower, not dangerous, but deeply ashamed. This was not only about an envelope, he said. She was preparing to make fear official. Evelyn stared at her own name circled on the page. For a second, all the strength went out of her face. Maya looked up at her mother, then at Vincent. Was she going to make us leave? She asked. Vincent closed the folder. No, he said. Because she was never going to have that power. He turned to the wedding planner, who stood near the wall with tears in her eyes and a headset hanging uselessly at her collar. The ceremony is cancelled. But the staff dinner scheduled for tomorrow will still happen. Not in the kitchen. In the main dining room. The planner blinked. The main dining room? Yes, Vincent said. Every employee who worked for this wedding will be served there, with their families invited. Full pay remains. Overtime doubled. Mrs. Brooks covered her mouth again, but this time it was not from fear. Evelyn looked at Vincent as if she did not trust kindness that arrived wearing a suit. He understood. Trust could not be ordered into existence. It had to be rebuilt where silence had damaged it. Vincent placed Madison's ring on top of the unsigned documents, a small bright circle resting on the future she had tried to steal. Then he looked at Evelyn and Maya. Tomorrow, he said, this house will learn who has been holding it together. The guests left slowly, not because anyone asked them to hurry, but because no one knew how to walk out of a room where the truth had rearranged the furniture of their conscience. Coats were gathered from the front hall. Cars rolled through the wet driveway. The senator's wife paused beside Evelyn before leaving, opened her mouth as if an apology might come. Then lowered her eyes and said only, "Good night, Mrs. Carter." It was not enough, but it was the first time she had used Evelyn's name. When the last guest disappeared into the rain, the mansion grew quieter than Vincent had ever heard it. Not empty. Listening. The wedding planner began collecting ivory folders from the side table with trembling hands until Vincent stopped her. "Leave them," he said. "They can wait." Everything could wait except the people standing in front of him. Evelyn had not moved from the fireplace. Maya was half asleep against her side now, worn out by fear, truth, and the strange weight of being believed in a room full of adults. Vincent looked at the child and thought of all the times he had walked past the staff kitchen without noticing the small homework shelf near the pantry, the colored pencils in a coffee mug, the folded blanket on the last chair. A life had been happening in the margins of his house, and he had called it order because it did not inconvenience him. "Mrs. Carter," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology." Evelyn blinked as if he had spoken in a language she had not expected from him. "Sir, that is not necessary." "It is." His voice remained calm, but something in it made even Mrs. Brooks look down. "I approved your daughter being here after school. Then I never made sure this house was safe for her. I hired people to guard my gates, my cars, my private rooms, but no one was guarding the dignity of the people who work here." Evelyn's face tightened around emotions she was trying not to show. "We were managing," she said. Vincent shook his head once. "You were surviving. That is not the same thing." The words settled heavily between them. Evelyn looked at Maya, then at the polished floor, where Madison's heels had clicked only minutes before. "I did not speak up because I could not afford to lose this job," she said. "My husband died 3 years ago." Maya was 4. He was a school bus mechanic, a good man, the kind who fixed neighbors' cars for free and came home smelling like engine oil and peppermint gum. After he was gone, bills came faster than sympathy. This job gave me health insurance. It gave us stability. So, when Madison made comments, I swallowed them. When she changed my schedule, I adjusted. When she told Maya to sit where guests would not see her, I told myself pride does not pay rent. Maya stirred, her cheek pressed to her mother's sleeve. Evelyn's hand moved over her daughter's hair with a tenderness that made the grand parlor feel suddenly too large. Vincent listened without interrupting. For once, power had nothing useful to say until pain finished speaking. "But tonight," Evelyn continued, her voice breaking only slightly, "she put fear into my child. That is where I should have stopped being careful." Vincent stepped closer, keeping enough distance to honor the space she had spent years defending. "No," he said. "That is where I should have already stopped her." He turned to Mrs. Brooks. "Starting tomorrow, every staff policy in this house is reviewed by the people who live under it, not only the people who sign it. Children of employees will have a safe room near the kitchen with supervision after school. No staff member loses hours, housing privileges, or benefits without written cause and my direct review. And from tonight forward, no guest, family member, or future member of this house speaks to an employee as if respect is optional." Mrs. Brooks nodded, tears shining but not falling. Evelyn stared at him, cautious, tired, still dignified. "Rules are easy to say, Mr. Moretti." Vincent accepted that like a sentence he deserved. "Then I will spend the rest of my time here proving them." Maya opened her eyes just enough to look at him. "Can my mom still work here?" she whispered. Vincent lowered his voice. "Only if she chooses to." Evelyn's breath caught. Choice. In that house, for someone in her uniform, the word sounded almost impossible. And for the first time that night, the marble room did not feel like a place where people were ranked by wealth, title, or fear. It felt like a place where a little girl's truth had forced a powerful man to become smaller, humbler, and finally human. By midnight, the white roses were still in place, but their meaning had changed. No one ordered them removed. Vincent left them climbing the banister, soft and useless. While the housekeepers, Cooks, drivers, cleaners, and servers finished the work they had started before the truth interrupted the evening. Only now, they did not move with the same careful fear. A cook named Raphael laughed once in the kitchen, then covered his mouth as if laughter might be a violation. Mrs. Brooks told him softly, "It is all right." Those 4 words traveled farther than she expected. They reached the dish room, the pantry, the staff corridor, even the laundry room where Maya had been afraid to breathe only hours before. Evelyn tried to return to work because habit was stronger than relief. She began stacking dessert plates with one hand while holding Maya's coat with the other, but Vincent stopped at the kitchen doorway and looked at her, not as an employer inspecting unfinished duty, but as a man seeing a wound he had walked past too many times. "Go home, Mrs. Carter," he said. "Stay with your daughter tonight. You will be paid for the full shift." Evelyn's first instinct was to refuse. People like her were taught that rest had to be earned twice and accepted carefully. But Maya leaned against her side, small and exhausted, and Evelyn nodded. "Thank you," she said. It was not warm yet. It was not trust. But it was no longer fear alone. Anthony arranged a car for them, and Vincent walked them to the side entrance himself. The rain had thinned to a silver mist over the driveway. Maya paused before stepping outside, turned back, and looked at the marble hallway as if she were trying to decide whether it was still a place to be afraid of. Vincent noticed. "Maya," he said gently, "when you come back, you may use the front door." Evelyn looked up sharply. For a second, the old rules rose between them, invisible and heavy. Staff used side doors. Staff children stayed out of sight. Staff thanked the house for tolerating them. Vincent held the door open and said nothing more, because the sentence had already done what it needed to do. Maya gave a tiny nod, then climbed into the car beside her mother. Vincent watched the taillights disappear down the long wet driveway, and the estate behind him seemed larger, colder, and more honest than it had that morning. The next day, there was no wedding. No string quartet. No Isle of Ivory silk. No guests whispering about flowers and family alliances. Instead, the main dining room was set at noon with the gold-rimmed plates Madison had chosen for herself. The staff entered slowly, some still wearing work shoes, some with spouses, children, elderly parents, and tired faces unused to being invited through the center of the house. Mrs. Brooks stood near the doorway, guiding them in with a smile that trembled at the edges. Raphael brought his wife and 2 sons. The gardeners came in clean shirts. The drivers sat beside the housekeepers. And then Evelyn arrived with Maya. For one quiet moment, mother and daughter stood at the threshold of the main dining room. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, turning the polished table into a river of gold. Maya held her mother's hand. Evelyn's uniform was pressed, but she had left her apron at home. Vincent stepped forward before anyone could wonder where they belonged. "Mrs. Carter," he said, loud enough for the room to hear, "Maya. I saved 2 seats near the head of the table." No one spoke. They simply watched Evelyn walk into a room that had never been meant for her, holding the hand of the little girl who had told the truth when every adult around her had been afraid to. The seat near the head of the table did not make Evelyn powerful, and it did not erase the years that had taught her to stand near walls, lower her voice, and measure every room before entering it. But it changed the way the house looked at her. That was where repair began, not with speeches, not with applause, but with a chair pulled out in the open and a name spoken correctly. Vincent remained standing until everyone had taken a seat. The staff who had spent years serving from behind swinging doors now sat beneath the chandelier, looking up at ceilings they had polished and windows they had washed, seeing the room from the side of dignity for the first time. Maya sat beside her mother with both hands around a glass of lemonade, her small feet not quite touching the floor. She kept glancing at the gold-rimmed plate in front of her as if it might vanish if she trusted it too quickly. Raphael's sons whispered over the folded napkins. Mrs. Brooks dabbed her eyes with the corner of a cloth napkin and pretended she was only adjusting it. No one rushed them. No one asked them to be quiet. No one told the children they were in the wrong place. Vincent lifted his glass, but he did not make the kind of toast rich men make when they want forgiveness to sound elegant. He looked first at Evelyn, then at Maya, then at every person who had kept his house alive while he mistook silence for order. "Yesterday," he said, "I learned that a house can be guarded at every gate and still fail the people inside it. That ends now." He set the glass down without drinking. The sentence did not need ceremony. It needed proof. Over the next few weeks, proof arrived in quiet ways. The laundry room was repainted a soft yellow and turned into an after-school room with bookshelves, snacks, a round table, and a sign that read family room. Staff schedules were rewritten with fair hours and clear protections. The side entrance remained, but it was no longer the only door people like Evelyn were expected to use. Mrs. Brooks was given authority to report mistreatment directly to Vincent without fear of retaliation. Evelyn was promoted to staff operations manager, not because she had suffered, but because she had already been leading with more grace than anyone had bothered to recognize. Maya returned to school with new notebooks, but she kept the cracked pink phone case. She said it reminded her that even small voices could hold big truths. As for Vincent, he changed in ways most people would not notice at first. He still wore dark suits. He still spoke softly enough to make rooms listen. He still carried the weight of a man shaped by power. But he began walking the back halls as often as the front ones. He learned the names of the people who worked before sunrise. He stopped accepting fear as a form of respect. Months later, when white roses bloomed again along the west garden fence, Maya stood near them after school, reading aloud while Evelyn checked the new staff schedule beside her. Vincent passed through the hallway and paused by the open door. For once, the mansion did not feel like marble, money, and locked rooms. It sounded like pages turning, dishes clinking, children laughing, and people breathing without permission. Maya looked up and smiled. Evelyn did too, not carefully, not nervously, but freely. Vincent nodded once and continued down the hall, leaving the door open behind him. And that day, the house remembered what dignity looks like.